welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Another excellent episode. Today we're going to be speaking with Will Hart about his book, The Genesis Race, Our Extraterrestrial DNA and the True Origin of the Species. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healings, or psychic readings. So if there's stuff going on in your life, have a problem at work, in your relationships, your health, give me a call, send me an email. We can set up a time for a private consultation, mano a mano. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can download their free 50-page Jumpstart Your Intuition Guide. That's appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. And I'm just trying to think if there's any other announcements that I need to make today. Not that's really jumping out at me other than Icon Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients, $1.99, Amazon digital download. It's a bargain. Let me tell you a little bit about Will and bring him on the air. Now using the most current research on DNA, available archaeological, geodesic, and astronomical evidence, and a revolutionary analysis of the Book of Genesis, Will Hart will make the case that the gods were actually visitors from another world who genetically engineered modern humanity. Will Hart is a journalist, photographer, and filmmaker who has been investigating ancient mysteries and evidence of extraterrestrial intervention on Earth since 1969. So as you can tell, knowing me, you guys, this is going to be a good show. Anyway, hey, Will, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Good to talk to you finally, Rita.
I know. And I have to tell you, I read your book cover to cover, even underlined, which I'm a chronic underliner.
Me too. I know the habit.
I don't know that I can read without a pencil in my hand anymore. Let's start here. Let's start easy. What got you interested in investigating ancient mysteries and, in particular, human origin?
You know, that's a perfect question. I wanted to start there, so you must be somewhat psychic.
I am.
Yeah, well, I was going to actually.
People call me.
I was going to be autobiographical, and I'm almost never am. In 1969, I actually was living in Sweden. And I had several encounters, not the type where, alien craft are on the ground. It was more fairly close, but in the air, but there was no contact other than that, which really got my attention. It's shocking when you go through that. You read about it, and it's a little bit remote because somebody else had the experience, but when you have it, you've got to really do some serious thinking. And that's what started me. I've never written about that, actually. I've never really mentioned it publicly, but I decided now it's time just to disclose things and give people a context. Because, right, we're all on a journey, and each of us, gets triggered by one thing or another, and that got me going. And then I moved into, and I kept, I did that study of modern UFOs. But the truth is, and I don't know what our age difference is, but I was old enough by the mid-60s, I was 20. So I was very aware of everything going on. And UFOs were very much in the public consciousness then. It was very, very much on everybody's mind in the 60s. And it was a big part of why NASA got the support it did. Although you hardly hear about that anymore. It's almost like it didn't exist. But that's the truth. People wanted to know. And I wish we had that attitude right now. But I think it's in a smaller group that's a little more passionate. But we can go from there. That's kind of, does that answer your question enough?
It answers it enough because I had to stop taking notes. I mean, because I always have questions. And I was like, okay, you have enough. So, because I think we're going to have a very lively discussion, and I just, want to make sure we hit all the high points.
Well, that was, that's what's got me started. Then I grabbed all the books, and I was reading everything about modern UFOs, and then von Daniken's books came out, and I read those, and then by the mid-'70s, I was geared up to, I was very intrigued by the Mayan civilization in Mexico, and I finally decided in the late 70s to make the trip to Mexico and investigate for myself. And I spent a year solid doing nothing but going to pyramid sites and visiting with people and museums and just completely saturated. And I, at the end of it, I said, you know what? I don't ever want to climb a pyramid again.
Let me ask.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
What made you make the connection? I mean, there's Eric von Daniken's work, but what made you make the connection between the extraterrestrials or the UFO that you saw and the concept of the gods?
Well, to me, what happened was, as I studied, the ancient history, and I was looking at the artifacts, and because I wanted to come to my own conclusion, von Daniken, a lot of times, I mean, he's a popular writer. He's not real scientific, and it wasn't really a theory. It's more like a thesis, a proposal. And I thought, well, can this thing get more scientific? Because I saw a lot of things that really surprised me and even shocked me in what I experienced. I mean, for instance, when you go to Teotihuacan, which is about an hour's drive from Mexico City, and you're not prepared for it, which I wasn't, because this was back when people really didn't know about Mexico much. And you see the site that stretches out for 1.5 miles with just pyramids all over the place. You're wondering, what is this? Who did this? And then when I felt, the more I investigated, the more I realized, for instance, at that site, the thing that shocked me was you have a pyramid that's about half the height of the Great Pyramid, the same size base, which is interesting. They both have about a 13-acre base. At that time, of course, we know about the descending passage in the Great Pyramid, but at that time at Teotihuacan, the archaeologists were saying, well, we've found a cave beneath this pyramid. There's a natural cave, and they just kind of let it at that. Well, they've since now admitted, 20 years later, 30 years later, that it's not a natural cave. It's an artificial tunnel, and it's exactly as long as the one underneath the Great Pyramid.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's an artificial tunnel, completely carved out, walls, supports, everything. And that kind of gives you a little insight into how, our conventional archaeologists proceed. And they don't look back, and they won't admit when they make a mistake, and they just kind of move on and then change it and put cave in quotes. And, now we have a tunnel here, and it's 330 feet long. And I've read, the archaeological reports on it. It's fascinating. It's just fascinating. And you're thinking, well, we have this pyramid in Egypt, and then we have this pyramid over here in Mexico, and they're roughly the same size, but one is half the height of the other. They both have these, and the one in underneath the descending passage underneath the Great Pyramid it's arrow straight. I mean, it's just completely, you can just look at it and go, come on, people didn't make this with their hands, with hammer stones, and, it's ridiculous. And this, as I've gone along, what concerns me is we're in a civilization now that's, it's very high tech. I mean, we've got a lot of science going on. And yet these people are coming out of academia with these silly ideas. And we're supposed to go, oh, yeah, right. Sure, they built that precision-engineered 48-story tall structure just with hand tools. No horses, no wheel, no bronze, no nothing. Are you kidding me? And do you realize, I hope people understand, because now I'm kind of at the point where I've been at this a long time. And it's like, I'm waiting for a breakthrough, and then you realize, and I know Hancock and Graham Hancock and Anthony West and other writers realize now this is all political. It's got nothing to do with science. We turned that corner a long time ago. It's strictly political. That makes people, you have to realize.
Political because they're trying to hide the timeline, that kind of political?
Well, yeah. And that and the concept is it opens up a door they don't want to open up.
And which door
you hit the nail on the head, because I'm sure Robert Schoch and his work on the Sphinx. Mm-hmm. Well, when they went before, and this was in '91, and they went before the Geological Association, both of them. The Egyptologist Mark Lerner gave a presentation from that side, and Schoch gave his report. And all that Lerner could say was not a scientific response. All he said was, we don't have a culture back then. That's not really science. That's saying, by our theories about what happened and who was there then, we don't have anybody, so it can't be that. Even though he presented all this other evidence, geological evidence, we don't have the people. That doesn't matter. Who said people did it? We don't know. Science says, what do the facts tell me? What's the evidence? Don't start with an idea. You better have some facts to back it up. Well, they don't.
But even if we didn't have a quote-unquote culture back then, or we didn't have people back then based on what they know over here, and you show that this is actually dated to this earlier period, then you should take a look at what's over here and go, well, maybe we need to revisit this because somehow we need to incorporate this other site in. Like Göbekli Tepe. I was doing an interview the other day, and they go, well, what do you do with Göbekli Tepe? I go, they just want to ignore it.
Exactly. That's exactly their strategy. Ignore the things, dismiss them however you can, even if it's silly nonsense. Dismiss them, attack the people that come up with the ideas, keep, people off balance, and it'll go away. And you know what? They might be right, because they have a very big strategy. I don't know if we want to go through that door, maybe later on, but they have a very large strategy.
Briefly, because I have an agenda. So,
well, the whole pseudoscience. I think if people go on this the Wikipedia, you will find invariably, if you look up certain people and certain concepts, you're going to find them dashed, bashed, smashed, pseudoscience, and you're wondering, because all those people that put that stuff up are anonymous. But repeatedly, it's the same ideas. The people who have come up, who've written very popular books on very controversial topics, they're just bashed. They're discredited. And I think and a case in point is Graham Hancock's presentation on TED. They pulled it. They just flat out censored it. And that tells you there's some very powerful forces behind all this who have an agenda, and they mean to get it done.
That's just, I keep having these shows and this concept of this hidden agenda and what our world is or how we perceive the world, the matrix we live in is
Uh-huh.
just that. The matrix and what's really going on is totally different than what we experience. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to leave the matrix because it really is a scary thought if there are these people that is their agenda to keep all kinds of stuff hidden from us.
Well, it is. That is their. I think even 20 or 30 years ago, it wasn't so much that there was some kind of organized, and they don't have to sit down in a committee meeting. You know how conspiracies actually work. The people who are on the same page know. I mean, it can be a wink, and they know exactly what to do and what the situation is. And, or a thumbs up or down, or they'll read something in some report. They know. And it's such a phalanx that, of look, you look at the Great Pyramid. I mean, let's just take that. You've got, I don't know if you're familiar with, and most people aren't, because they hide this stuff, but Egyptologists in 1999 brought in a forensic engineering firm, major international firm, to study it and give them the whole deal. Well, one of the I got a hold of it and I looked and I read, that okay, we studied it, and the base is so flat, it's so level that it would take a laser level to do it with that kind of precision. Now that makes you just stand right back and go, okay. And then you look at the tools.
Over 13 acres. Over 13
acres, completely flat. And we're talking bedrock. This is not dirt. This was bedrock, and it was very rough. If you look at that plateau, you know what it was like. So, and they had this, okay, you got a 13A now. All they had to work with was hammerstones. They were Stone Age. Now, I think, okay, now the first thing they had to do was after they flattened that, they dug the descending passage. That had to be done. It was set at 26 degrees. It's only about a little over 4 feet tall, very narrow, so you cannot even have somebody standing up working. They would have to do it with a hammerstone, solid rock for 330 feet. How?
Well,
it's ridiculous.
Just like how they would go and mine ochre in mines in South Africa, where they remove 100 and something tons of ochre in these deep mines with sticks for light. Right.
Yeah, and what we're asked, it's almost as if what the power elite is doing is saying, it's basically really gets down to power. It just gets to control. I'll tell you what happened, and even if it totally conflicts everything that you logically come up with, it doesn't matter because I'm telling you what happened.
And so don't think
we're not changing our position for anything. The pyramid, but they did change. See, when I was younger, it was slaves built the pyramid. They had to back away on that one. They no longer try to say that.
And now it was some group effort.
Well, the farmers did it in their spare time because they realized slaves could not perform precision engineering, but then they figured the farmers can. Look, the tools have to match the artifact. We know that. I mean, come on, we've had 5,000 years of civilization. We can know the progression of tools, that we went from stone tools and then later metal, and we had metal hammers, and then we moved on, to saws, and now we have power saws. We don't want to go back 5,000 years and look at something that we can't build today still. That's what messes everybody's head up. And see, that's where I like the work of Graham Hancock. He's raised over the years a lot of good questions. He does a lot of good analysis. He's a good writer. But then when you come up, with a theory, the Giza power plant and so on, that's good too. It opens up the door and makes people think. But then when you come up with, he doesn't come up any further and say, but here's who built it. It couldn't have been people. Leaves that door open. because they don't want to step that far into the controversy. They don't want to go to the next logical step. Well, if people didn't do it, somebody did it. That's all I'm saying, because I don't know who it was that did it, but I know people didn't do it.
Well, and your book, and this is going to sound like a selfless plug, and it's a selfless plug.
Go ahead.
But your book and my book, E.T. Chronicles, I think they marry each other so well. And I don't know about for you, but when I went to actually put pen to paper, there was no way to write the book without putting the extraterrestrial question front and center in the dissertation. Period. Because nothing else made any sense.
Yes, and you do have to. I mean, just in science, when you can falsify, right? When you can go in and falsify that, look, you're telling me that they built this great pyramid, 48 stories, precision engineered, and we can still see some of the casing stones on the northeast corner, I think they are. There's like 6 stones still there. They're just beautiful. I mean, you can see what the structure looked like, at one point in time, that it was amazing. I think if we saw it like that, we wouldn't assume people did it at all. We'd know. But we see it, it's kind of broken down. It's not that great looking now. It's impressive in its size. But when you stand back, like you were saying, and we agreed, 13 acres flat as a pancake that would take a laser level tells you something. And the engineer that wrote that, I happened to run down an article he wrote in an engineering journal about it, about his study, right? And he basically, between the lines, was tipping off to other engineers, look, people didn't do this. Is he going to come out and say it? No. And hardly any scientist will, because their reputation is at stake. But he said between the lines, look, they had no pulleys, they had no wheel, there's nothing in the papyrus documents about it, and it's true. Pyramids, if they were so important to Egyptians, why don't you find them in the papyrus documents? Why don't you find them in the artwork? Also, the Great Pyramid, there's nothing on it. There's nothing there. There's no hieroglyphs. There's nothing that what we find in the Valley of the Kings with the tombs that we actually know were Egyptian. Everything is absent. It's a completely anonymous structure. That's their signature. That's what they do everywhere they go, because you go to Peru and you'll find the same thing. Bolivia, same thing. Big cut stones, beautifully precision cut, and nothing on them.
Well, and that was going to be a comment I was going to make. We have the pyramids, and everyone's like, oh, the pyramids. But there are structures around the world that defy construction technology. I mean, I just think of, Sacsayhuaman. How the heck did they do that? I mean,
exactly.
The pyramids are more conceivable in construction than that wall or series of walls. I don't know how they did it.
No, I have no. That's why that's where we have to come up and be honest too. That because we can falsify, right, what these ideas are that our historians are coming up with, doesn't mean we have. I can't point to there were the people in the Pleiades that did it, or I don't know. Well, I just know it wasn't people, and I know that to me, what I see is a signature. The signature is we're not you. Because if we were you, we would have told you. That's what you do. That's what humans do. We take credit for everything. I don't care what it is. Write a little letter, that people will take credit for it and fight over it. Write a song, and they'll do the pyramid and walk away and go, think that over. Think about it. Who do you think did that? You didn't do it. But then you get into our quagmire, which is politics. Do you think the Egyptians are going to want to go, aliens did it? Oh, no. This is their heritage. We own this thing. We make a lot of money off this thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally know what you're saying. And what I find interesting, I like reading a lot of out-of-print books, stuff from the late 1800s, early 1900s. Those are my favorite. Anthropological books. And basically, even from that point in time to today, we really haven't, and I'm putting this in quotation marks, discovered anything or come up with anything new, because they're basically spouting the exact same stuff that they were spouting then. They still have the same questions, and they still are coming up with basically the same answers.
I think that Petrie was, to me, he's the guy to read. He's still the main person, the legitimate intellectual in there that didn't have an axe to grind, who went in and just did a very objective job on it. And when you read his
When
work,
was he writing? When was he writing?
Oh, he was the first. He's kind of the father of Egyptology. It would have been the late 19th centuries. Flinders Petrie.
But see, that's why I like reading those books, because the writers are the most objective, although, really prejudiced. And
Well, he didn't know. They didn't have the theory then that, they didn't know. They're just, he was looking at it going, he measured everything. And he was a very smart guy. And he said, this is very strange that we have this massive structure that has precision on the level of today's optics. That means he was completely baffled, Mm-hmm. He was, this can't be, but here it is. So what do we do? And we're, I'm not doing that anymore because, well, I am on one level. I'm still going, how do they do this? And why? What did they do it for? Because here's part of the pyramid. When you really go deeply into it, you got to think it through. Everything that was inside of that pyramid was taken out. It was deliberately removed, and it wasn't removed by modern people. It was removed before then. All the working parts that were in there were taken out, and then it was sealed off. It completely, whoever did it, then sealed it. Why? Against who? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's just very, very profound questions in there but you have to go, it takes a long time, and I don't even think you can your mind will just get kind of burned out on it, that this mystery, and
that's just one example.
That is the point. That is the point, because actually when you think about it, it was the pyramid that geared people to studying it. It kind of got people going in architecture and mathematics, and you know what I mean? Just studying this thing and measuring it and wondering about it. And, and eventually, many centuries later, we got to the point where we couldn't. I actually, in the next book, I wrote a chapter on could we build it today? And I think we're actually close to where we have the capability, but we never would, because we wouldn't have the will to do it. There's no purpose to it.
And we don't have the level of artisanship, I don't think.
Well,
to be honest, you have to get the joints tight. They can't even build a house that way anymore. Right? Let's move on. Let's move on, because we got a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you want to cover?
Okay. So your book opens up, and I'm kind of like jumping in a little bit, and you talk about life on Earth, the formation of life on Earth. Based on your research, do you think that life on Earth evolved by itself from lower forms to where we are today?
No. Life on Earth, I pick up kind of where Francis Crick and Leslie Orgel, the theory of directed panspermia. That life did not originate on Earth. And they gave, both of them were Nobel Prize winners, and they knew their DNA. I mean, Crick discovered it. And when they came out with that theory, which basically is that life did not originate on Earth, it was transplanted here, that it originated elsewhere in the cosmos, and that's partly why the fossil record is so screwed up. Why they don't, why Darwinists have gotten so frustrated. Because they don't find
intentionally transplanted?
Yes, intentionally transplanted.
Like little, one-celled algae, or are we talking, because there's that whole thought that we started in that little pond of water, scum water, and then it got hit by lightning, and then poof, we had one-celled algae. You mean you don't believe that?
No, not at all.
Oh, man.
They never proved that.
I saw it on TV.
It's been disproven.
I saw it on TV. It's got to be true.
No, well, I mean, that's exactly why Crick and Orgel came up with the theory because they said, look, Darwinism doesn't work, and we know it. And the scientists know it. They know it. They know what part of Darwinism works and what doesn't. So they said, it was too complicated, too early, that irreducible complexity really is true, that even the smallest cells are little machines. They're very intricate. And they said, okay, it didn't just evolve out of a soup here, then it must have come from somewhere else. And could it have come from somewhere else? And they realized it could. And they know now that early stages of the universe, there were parts of it that were very warm and probably much more hospitable to life. The Earth and this solar system is not that hospitable to life. You go out there a little ways, and it's completely lethal. So we're in our little bubble here, and trying to figure out how did all this happen. Well, what I'm trying to tie together is what they didn't consider, and their biological arguments were very good. And in fact, irreducible complexity, the intelligent design, comes from what they did. Is take it and go, okay, they didn't look at the ancient evidence, history's mysteries at all. They didn't even consider it. They figured, the historians had that all figured out. They also did not look at modern UFOs. Well, I bring both of those in. That's what I'm trying to do, is integrate these things. I'm saying, people, let's look at this whole picture. And what did the Sumerians say? Point blank, the Sumerians said, the Anunnaki, these other people came from space and did all this. We didn't create all this. We didn't create this civilization. They said that. It's our modern scholars who are saying they did it. But if you read their documents, we didn't create it. These other people did. They came from another planet. Okay?
So, all right, stop right there. Let's back up. Let's not even get to civilization yet. I got some questions. Let's not get to civilization yet. I don't want people yet. Let's go. Okay. Let's go back in time. Okay, so we have these little spermias flying around. They land on Earth and they start to reproduce here on Earth. Do you think that? And so you said that you thought that they were directed. Cool with that. Once life started growing on Earth, do you think that the evolution happened by itself? Do you think that these extraterrestrials came by the Earth periodically and kind of gave it a little push?
Yes. That's it.
I am loving you more, Will, because I didn't see that in your book.
Oh, no, it's not in that book. No. So, I should.
Oh, it's in my book.
Yeah, good. That book was more introductory, and we agree on that exactly.
Okay.
They have intervened, they have interjected. We're talking about DNA. The paleontologists, they came up with neo-Darwinism, right? Because they couldn't find the fossils in the record. All of a sudden, it goes from simple, and then it takes this huge leap. Well, then that's where we're talking about an external agency coming in and going, okay, the planet has evolved to this point. Now we give it a bump. Because that's what neo-Darwin, the punctuated equilibrium is. Well, we can't see where this came from, but all of a sudden, all this happens, and there's no transitional species. That's why.
What about the concept of intelligent design?
Well, they just don't go far enough, Yeah, they have all just like Crick, they have all the critiques of Darwinism down, and they have, but they don't go any further, because basically, they're traditional biblical creationists, a lot of them, not all of them. Some of them just straight up scientists who see the flaws in Darwinism, but they're not going to, what you and I are talking about, what you've written about and I've written about, that it's beyond the pale for most scientists. Although I will tell you, I got invited last year to give a presentation before a scientific group.
Cool.
They wanted to hear it. Well, you're updating Crick and Orgel? Okay, give us your presentation, because you saw that book was done in 2003, which means what? It was written in the late 1990s, 2000. which means I did the research before then. Well, the reason I waited until now was I was waiting for, let's get the confirmation to take this to the next level. Is there water out there? Oh, yes, they found it now. In the last 5 years, documented, water's out there. It's all over the place. Well, that's a huge, because if they didn't find it, it kind of falls, you know, anything coming from space is going to be difficult to prove. But they have found it. On the moon, in fact, NASA has known about water on the moon since the 60s. They hid it. They had to come out with it because the Indian spacecraft came out with it. Then NASA owned up to it and said, yeah, okay, we found water on the moon a long time ago. NASA, like you were saying earlier, you know, our institutions are playing their own game. They don't tell us the truth. You have to pry it out of them. NASA has, people debate, did they go to the moon or not go to the moon? There's arguments both ways that are pretty good. Did they encounter something there? I'm pretty convinced, yes, they encountered something.
Sorry about that. All right, next question. You mentioned the Anunnaki. Do you think that the Anunnaki were the gods that did all of this stuff? Do you think that they were a group of gods, you know, with the small g, that came and interacted with humanity? How widespread do you think this extraterrestrial presence into Earth evolution, how far this goes?
Well, to me, the Anunnaki and the Elohim of the Bible are the same. Sitchin didn't, you know, he very much focused on the Anunnaki and that. But to me, when I read the corruption of ancient Hebrew through Greek into English, and I realize people are thinking it says God in the singular, it doesn't. It says God in the plural. It says the Elohim. People who know Hebrew know that that's a plural. It's a plural word, and they're the, you know, you can think of them in different ways, but it's plural. It's not the singular God did all this work on this planet, because that is the job of other beings. We'll do it too. I mean, we're getting set up to try to put life on other planets. I mean, that's see, to me, ultimately, that's our job. We're going to extend life. That's what beings do. You know, we're just we're floundering right now. I don't understand why they haven't done it already. Put life on Mars. What's this big deal? What are you worried about sterilization for? For what? Put it on other planets.
I think there is life on Mars, and that's why we haven't really moved forward with it. I think that's why we've had issues with the rovers coming down, because it almost seems like, and this is just kind of an intuitive thing, like they've gotten shot out of space.
Yeah,
just a thought.
The Russians had incredible problems. It's a very, you know, and you go back through the history of the space race, so-called, and all that, you realize there's a lot of anomalies to it. The Russians were great at getting things going, and then they couldn't get anything on the moon. They had repeated failures with their Martian spacecraft, and you're right. A lot of these things could have been blown out of the air. I mean, and also, it kind of brings up the point. We're talking about the Anunnaki. The Elohim in the Bible, right? What do? You know, verse 26, they go through a very orderly, logical flow of creation. You know, light, water, plants, animals, then man. Yeah, that's how it happened. Man comes along, let us. Now, it confounds me why Christians don't get it. They read that and they go, huh? Let us? Who's God talking to?
He had Facebook.
Figure it out. You know, figure it out. Was it your concept of God, or is the Bible telling you that your preachers are wrong, that your theologians got it wrong, and you can prove it to yourself if you go through up to chapter 6? That's about as far as you have to go to realize what actually happened on the planet. You're told. It's not a mystery. We're told. It's right there. Sumerians said it. The Israelites said it. We're in the Garden of Eden. All of a sudden, Adam and Eve affront the gods, insult them, violate the law. And what do the gods talk to each other and say, we can't let them get the tree of life. This race here is not getting to the tree of life. In other words, they're not getting to immortality. They're not going to be immortal like we are. There's nothing in physics that says against immortality. If a race advanced 1 billion years ahead of us, they could be immortal. They could have figured everything out. That's what they say. And we're going to put this protective wall here, and they're not going to get to this thing. So, but then we go through all of, just like we're still doing with the pyramid and all the rest of the stuff, we go through all of our politics. Going, well, what is this? How come this and that? And we see all these, like you were saying, some of those things in Peru and Bolivia. If anybody looks at them and thinks that people made them, it baffles me, because when the Spaniards went there and asked the Incas, did you build this? They looked at the Spaniards like they were crazy. They said, no, we didn't build this. Are you kidding? So where do you, then the modern scholar comes along and says, you know what, we don't care. Because we're making up the story.
We'll just say the Inca built it. Yeah.
The Inca built it. And whatever you say, the Inca built it. And you come back with all this proof, and they'll go, no, the Inca built it. How did they build it? Well, we don't know exactly, but the Inca built it. Mm-hmm. The Egyptians built it. Even though, they didn't have any tools to speak of, the Egyptians
built it. They don't know
it.
how.
But doesn't that kind of, like you brought up early when we started the discussion, this, whatever you want to call it, New World Order, globalism, this agenda somebody has, dumb people down and make them think your thoughts. I mean, that's what it's about. Even if you've trained them to think and they've gone to school, you will get educated people who will talk just as stupid as a nitwit on the street about this stuff. They'll go, well, no, they did it. They built a ramp around it. And are you kidding? And
they had that many people.
Well, even if you did, it doesn't matter. If you built a ramp and you try to carry, you have to explain the 70-ton granite stones in the 150 feet up in the pyramid. How do you get them there? You can't. If you go up the side and then you've got to turn to the left, the men who are going around the corner with ropes stretched back to the stone, it's not going to happen, because it's going to hit the side of the pyramid. It's going to hit the corner. I mean, it's too obvious, and you cannot. I think where we got lost too is in my articles back about a dozen years ago, I started comparing modern things. I was telling people, look, I've been to the mines. I used to live in Arizona. I've been to the mines there. I know what these earth movers are like with 13-foot high wheels. And you know what they're rated to carry? 250 tons. That's all they can carry. There are stones in Egypt, 400 tons. Mm-hmm. And if an earth mover can't carry it, do you really believe a group of humans can carry it? What they do is they throw numbers at it. No, it doesn't matter. You can't do anything with it. You couldn't have gotten it out of the ground in the first place. How would you undercut it? How would you lift it? You can't do it. You have to have cranes. You have to have the equipment. But people don't think it through, and that's exactly what academics count on. Who's going to spend all this time? Everybody's living their life. Who cares? So, it happened, it's gone, and they'll never figure it out. So somebody like me and you come along and go, wait a minute. We get a little attention, and,
And it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, people will listen. When you get their attention and you point out the things, they've already thought about it, and then they're thinking, yeah, and when you start putting them all together, then when you bring modern UFOs in to the picture, and it's like, those are out there too, and we know it, and they're telling us they're not there.
It's your imagination.
So now we got the pyramid, we got our history, and none of it that we think is real. All of a sudden they're telling you, no, you don't see what you see. White is black and black is white. We'll tell you what you see and what you think. And you're going, no, I'm not going to. But a lot of people go, okay, because you know what? It's a lot of trouble. And it is. Because you do a lot of thinking, and I know you do. Because to write a book about this, you've got to really think.
Oof, beyond think.
That's right. It is beyond think.
Let's go back to Genesis. You made the comment that it tells the story of where we came from. But if we weren't there, then how do we know what the story is?
I'm sorry. I didn't wrap my mind around that question.
Okay.
If we weren't there...
You said that the book of Genesis,
right.
Chapter 1, Chapter 2, which we're going to get into a little bit more. But if we weren't there, then how do we know what the story is? Because we came at the end. So how do we know what happened prior?
Well, that's where you have to, it come down through those beings that they gave the basic account, knowing that it's not going to make any sense to these people for a long, long time what this is. They're just going to go, this thing came down on the mountain, fire and thunder, and Moses went up there, and he came back, and his face was all burnt red, and he scared the crap out of us, and we had him, we had him, cover his face because it was all red and burned. And we can understand that now as radiation, and we can understand Jehovah cordoning off the area, saying anybody comes in here except for you dies. It was always spiritually interpreted, but when you look at it a different way, it makes a little more sense. And him, and getting the explanations and getting the tablets and so on, because it's Moses who gets it. It's Moses who writes, who passes that down, that ends up being in Genesis.
But was Moses told by these extraterrestrials what the history was?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, he was given, and I don't know how many times that they put, that there were encounters with these, the pillar of cloud, the pillar, by day and by night, and it changes, and it's obvious like there's something there that's guiding them. It has to be intelligently controlled, and it changes. Well, it's not a bird or a cloud because they don't act like that. We know that. But did the Israelites have any comprehension? None. Zero. They had no machinery whatsoever. They were pastoral. They were sheep herders. That's it.
I just watched this film from like 1979. I had never seen it before, of these anthropologists going into, I think it was Papua New Guinea, and they interacted with a tribe it was the first time this tribe had ever encountered white people. So I'm assuming Westerners. And they gave them like a box of matches and showed them how to strike it, and they had a tape recorder and they were recording them, and then they were playing it back, and they were all shocked. And the thought that was going through my head is these anthropologists are going to leave, and what was their story like of their encounter? And I would love, love, love for somebody to go and do a follow-up and find somebody that was there.
Well, you know what it would be? It would be that, these beings came and they had magic. They had superpowers. That's what it would be.
But that's what I would love for somebody to go and actually document, because as you know, well, as you were saying, it's like they had the ability to build these sites, with this level of precision, but according to researchers, they couldn't describe what was right in front of their face.
Well, that's the conundrum, and if I confront and if I challenge archaeologists or historians, I say, look, you tell us on the one hand that our ancestors created all this. They did all these early civilizations with all these magnificent things, and out of the other side of your mouth you say, but you know what? They had childish imaginations, and their history is complete garbage. We'll tell you what their history is because it makes no sense. That's what they'll tell you. That's what they do. Yeah, they did the Great Pyramid, but don't listen to what they say, because they go back to the Zep Tepi and to the Watchers. We don't know anything about that. That doesn't make any sense to us. Well, that's their history. The first time. Who are the Watchers?
But they have good medicine. But that's beside the point.
The Egyptians, they're strictly human, and I like the Egyptian culture. They were great artisans. You know, they revered that environment they lived in. But they didn't build those pyramids. They weren't these super magicians, and that's what people want to believe, because we want to believe we do everything. But these beings are trying to tell us, be careful, because if you don't understand the truth, if we return, or if you get out of control, you're going to be completely devastated when we do return. I mean, you will fall apart, and it's true, we would. People could not handle it. And I've come to realize that a lot of people think, oh, the UFOs, come on, come on. You don't know what you're asking for. You don't know what you're talking about. It's a serious business. I've seen these beings. It's not honestly, it's not a game. And what's going on the planet right now is hardly a game, and people are waking up to it. When you see people getting their heads chopped off, when you see, the United States going from one war to another and making up the rules as they go along, you know something's changed. And it's changing very fast. Well, that's how the world goes. That's it. We're in another. That's partly why I wanted to talk about 2012, but I don't now. The change already happened. We're already in a different era. And if people don't realize, if you don't go back and go, what was it like 5 years ago? It wasn't like this. It already happened. The spiritual, the consciousness, the social change already happened. We are in a new era, and people are trying to catch up. Huh?
For the good or for the bad?
It's still up to us. What do you think? I mean, you see both. I think it's coming more to kind of a crescendo. There's kind of a building up feverishness where people are getting confused, they're upset. If you can keep your cool, keep your calm, and I'm sure you teach people this, that it's up to you to maintain. Don't just look out there and look at these, power structures and so on. They were all created by people, and people fill those offices. They can be affected, and they will be. But if you defer and if you turn over, your power, your consciousness to them, they will own you. You can see that. They will own you. They could care less. You just become another little robot, another number out there, and they're going to run you ragged.
But for the most part, they do control us, and they do own us.
They do.
And there's just this little piece of our mind, hopefully, that we can kind of keep free. But
you're right.
That's about it. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's very true, and that's how this thing works, And I'm pretty sure it's always worked this way. Partly because there's a flip, the yin yang, the positive negative. So you've got this light, you've got this darkness. Well, people work the same way, And we're talking about now the 7 billion people. My God. And that's a lot of energy. That's consciousness. That's the human brain all the time, And now we're being, our ancestors just didn't have all this media constantly circulating through their heads. Thinking about places that are thousands of miles away, they didn't. They were just, they were going out to their farm. And that's their immediate environment was all they had. If they ever even left the area, it would be a surprise. We live in a different world.
But I think even by the time, and I don't want to take this too far down this road, but even by the time civilization occurred, because we haven't gotten to civilization yet, I think that we were fundamentally changed in our thinking. And I feel like when we lived in that hunter-gatherer society, we were so much more connected to nature, so much more connected to spirit and
Absolutely.
this
I
whole
totally agree.
other reality. And I mean, that's kind of one of my new line of questioning is what caused us to change? I don't have an answer, but that's in the back of my mind doing research.
Okay, my distinction in the first two chapters of Genesis is that Genesis 1 is about who you described as the hunter-gatherers. And I do not understand why Christians insist 1 and 2 are all blurred together. They're talking about the same thing. They're not. The first people were given everything natural. They were just go out and live in the wild, in nature, and that's what they were, like you said. That's what our ancestors were and did. And they knew nature like the back of their hands. Well, then you notice that everything about modern man, everything gets dark and fuzzy when modern man appears. All of a sudden, the Sumerians come along out of nowhere with a language nobody's ever heard of and still don't know what it's related to. And all these things start changing, and it is fuzzy. It is mysterious. And then they have this ready-made civilization. Oh, they've got the wheel, and they've got bronze, and they've got this, and they've got that. And from where? And why is it so different than everybody else on the planet? Because that was this introduction of modern man, who, like you're saying, modern people are different than those earlier people. We're just different.
Definitely different.
Yes, and our brains, the way we think, the way we perceive the world, the things that we've done are just along a totally different line. And now we're so far, this is purely speculative, but I have this feeling that once the hybridization started of plants and animals, that we were kind of bound to go along where we are now with genetic manipulation. And that, if you take that to its conclusion, it's not good. It doesn't end well. Because you get backed into a corner. When we become the ones in control, we're not nature. We'll make mistakes. And
you mean like the Frankenfish? Part salmon, part electric eel? I'm like, oh, I just want that experiment to go awry, and then I go wander into a stream and I have this salmon come bite my leg.
Okay, good. And now go back to Sumeria, and if you've looked at their artwork and so on, you've seen chimeras, right?
Chimeras.
Well, yeah, they think, the academics will tell you, well, that's just their imagination. Are you sure? Are you sure?
Berosus talks about how they were created in the underworld. And he was a Babylonian priest, and I think pretty legit.
I think that what we're looking at there, what we're playing out is exactly what they did. They had already done it, and that as soon as Crick and others opened that bottle, the genie came out of DNA, and once they started unraveling it, they realized, you know what? This is not that hard. This is actually pretty easy to mess around, change the genes, create new animals, new plants. They've already done it. And we have no idea what they're doing in secret government labs. None. You have no idea at all.
Well, and we need to go to break, and we're going to come back to that. Actually, I want to kind of go back to the creation of man story a little bit, but then we're going to get into this whole genetic thing when we come back.
You're the boss. You have the reins.
Okay. We're here talking to Will Hart. His book is The Genesis Race. So just want to let people know this has been out for a little while, so you might have to ask for it, but it is still available on Amazon.com. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we'll be back with Will after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages. And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. Thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, as well as soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer. We've been here talking to Will Hart about his book, The Genesis Race. I highly recommend it, and especially if you get my book, E.T. Chronicles. They work hand in hand. I would say mano a mano, but that doesn't work. Okay, so we're just going to move along. Will, before the break, we were talking about the creation story in Genesis. And one of the things that a lot of scholars bring up or try to cover up is the fact that there are these two stories of creation. And you started going into that a little bit. But where I get hung up, all right, and I'm just going to put this, where I get hung up with your work is in that dating with the putting it so late in the storyline of humanity, moving from hunter-gatherers. Or let me ask in a different way. When you talk about hunter-gatherers, how far back are you putting the first creation?
I'm actually talking about Neanderthals.
Oh, so you're putting it like way back.
Yeah, I'm not talking about modern man. That first chapter does not address modern man. That's why 2 and 3 go together, because at the end of 3, when Adam and Eve are expelled from the garden, they have to go become agriculturalists. That doesn't happen at the end of 1 with the first race. They're just living in nature, and God says, "Go, because I've given you all the green things out there to eat, and just go live." But at the end, and that's where I don't understand Christians or Jews who say, "Oh no, 1, 2, and 3 are all the same story." What are you talking about? They're totally conflicted. They're totally conflicted.
And see, where I get hung up with the second Genesis story, when Adam and Eve get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. I mean, you picked up on one line, which made me think, about him having to cultivate the soil, and I was like,
"Well, that's agriculture."
Mm-hmm. I know, and so I thought about that for a really long time. But the one that I got caught up on is when they left, God made them look clothes to wear made out of fur.
Exactly.
Which to me puts them back further in time, because by the time civilization started and agriculture started, they already had clothes. They weren't wearing fur anymore, I don't think.
Yeah. Here's part of what we have to keep in mind, and I have to too. When you read chapter 1 of Genesis, you're not even reading a short story, and it's telling, the whole creation story. And it's like, we're only talking about 250 words here. My God, most people, modern people, couldn't do anything in 250 words. So did they leave things out? Do I think that the Jewish, the scribes, the people that take everything down, gave us everything? No, I don't. I don't think the Levite priests passed everything along, and I know Jesus didn't, because he told everybody he didn't. Everything is not in the Bible, and anybody that thinks it didn't pay attention. It's not there. Jesus said, "I'd speak to the people in parables," and he told his apostles, "I'll tell you the straight deal, but I'll never tell all those people out there." You're meant to. People are literally misled. They're meant to get confused. If you can get confused, have I been confused? Oh yeah, I've been confused. And anybody that tells you they haven't been is lying. This is very confusing. It is. And the thing you're tripping over, I've tripped over different things too, and I look and I try to understand it. This is all compressed. It's like, the most kind of summary that you can get. Here's the basic stuff that happened, Then we go on to the next basic stuff, and you're supposed to get the bottom line here. People went from here to here. We're not giving you dates or anything, and I agree. And that's what our modern historians do. If they don't have a date, a timeline, they don't have anything. But I don't look at it that way. I want to know what happened, Were there Neanderthals? Well, we found them. Does the Bible say there were? Yes, it does. It agrees. and like you and I agreed earlier, somebody intervened, and I think we'll, see other areas where there were intervention too, and certainly in modern man, it's totally intervention then.
So do you think that the extraterrestrials created Neanderthals?
Yes. And that race was now how exactly and why we know more now. It's not that hard. I am sure right now they've got some mixed hybrid creatures in some lab somewhere. I have no doubt at all, because don't just think about the United States, which may have some laws and so on, although I think the CIA and various organizations will do whatever they damn well want to do. But we've got North Korea, and we've got China, and we've got Russia. Well, they're not playing by the same rules. And everybody has, and part of what I'm trying to say is the DNA, messing around with DNA is not that difficult once you get the code, and they got it. Once you get it, you can unravel it, you can mix things together. It's not hard. And they found that out. And, well, like you, I find it disturbing. Like you said about the salmon, I know there's many other things. They put human genes in mice to duplicate. They mess around with their brains, and, they're already cultivating all kinds of creatures for human transplants. They mix human genes with sheep and with other things. They've already made goats that can make silk. I mean, they mixed it together with spider genes. And this stuff, it sounds fantastic in science fiction, but it's real. They can already do all of that. They don't like to talk about it that much.
Well, I just heard about them mixing human genes with mice or pigs, or all kinds of animals. Right. And I'm going, okay, so what if they get the gene or the ability to use the gene that controls our ability to communicate? Because there's only one gene difference between us and every other animal on the planet that gives us the ability to communicate. What are we going to have, like Planet of the Apes, where we have talking apes running around because they got a little bit of human DNA?
Well, I think when people talk about the New World Order and this future that we're moving towards so fast with all this technology, and that's biotechnology, we're going to come up with the next generation of quantum computers that will be 100 times more powerful than what we got. I'm sure they have so many plans that you want to mix people and put computer chips in them to mix them with other animals. We're going to have all kinds of things in the future. I'm not so sure I will be here that long enough to see all of that. I hope not. That future alarms me. I just don't think I want to be there if that's where this is going. And it looks to me like it is, because I know that everything that we know, we're at least a decade or 2 decades behind what's actually there.
Do you think that the genetic manipulation that we're doing now, taking human DNA and putting it in a pig or into a mouse, do you think that is what these extraterrestrials did back in the day?
Well, yeah, they were recapitulating. Once that they made modern man, we have their genes. We're made in their image, like they said. They use their DNA along with another creature, though. We're not exactly like them, but we're partially like them. We're recapitulating what they did. That's why as soon as we got the technology and the infrastructure, what did we do? We wanted to go in space, and we wanted to mess with DNA. Why? Why did we do that right away? It's in our genes. Once we went on this path, that's it. Now we're totally committed. We can't back away. Now, you wanted to go into the agriculture thing, and I think...
Hang on, I got a follow-up question first.
Okay.
You were talking about this secret information that hasn't been disclosed, but I would assume it has been transmitted through the priestly line and through secret societies or whoever those people are. Do you think it's possible that a dictatum or some push has come from them to do this genetic engineering or go out into space, and not that it's necessarily part of our genetic character. Like there are stories and myths or teachings that they have handed down and have kept in secret that are kind of pushing us in that direction.
If you come to the point where you start asking really deep, serious questions and match it to what we've done and where we're at now, we're going to our planets. We've got a lot of, telescopes now, giving us information about planets, distant planets, that now they found out there's quite a few that are like Earth. Things are not that different out there. This is new information that's mind-blowing, because 50 years ago, people could imagine this, but then, it's like, well, we don't know. We do know now. We know. There's water out there. There are other planets like Earth. This starts to get very serious. This is like, do I think, look, do you pay attention to Michio Kaku and people like Hawking and those people?
Sometimes.
Well, if you look at them, what do they say about extraterrestrials? They already know. Both of them say, Hawking says, don't even mess with it. Don't even think about it. You don't want to go there because it's more likely that they're hostile to our interests. That's his conclusion. Kaku basically says, well, we know they're out there. We know there are other races out there. And when those people say that, they know 100 times more than what they're actually telling the public. I have no doubt NASA knows. And if you watch the way and I've watched them carefully since the mid-'60s, if you watch everything they do and how they play their game, and they're very careful about the information they release, they dribble it out over the years, and you only get a little bit, enough to keep them getting funding. Because they know what people want to see is manned missions, not robot missions. They can't do it.
Well, and I think they're afraid to send manned missions up there because they don't know. I mean, think about all and sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt. The images that you see of what look like sculptures on Mars, or, there's the recent one that it looks like a pyramid that, or the whole Cydonia thing with the face. And I'm sorry, it looks like a face to me.
You know what, though? To me, those things are misdirection. They are. They're misdirection. The real stuff is, the real important stuff is water. And they now know there was water on there. It's not saying it's there now, but there was water. They've got the proof. I've read it. Even NASA posted up there. They say, here's a stream bed on the Earth and here's one on Mars. They don't look any different. And they go, yeah, okay. If there's water, there's usually life. Something's going on. Now, a lot of times, I'm sorry, but Hoagland, to me, goes off on tangents. Hoagland was very much an insider. Very much an insider. He came up with the Enterprise as the name of the mission. And then later on, he's going, well, this and that, and he's fighting. Now, he may have become a renegade. I don't know. That's where you have to be careful. That's where you have to look at the facts and who's saying what, and who's misleading, and who's pretending to be something to put out disinformation to keep people preoccupied. Because what I see is everybody back in the 60s said something was up there on the moon, wasn't there? And NASA said, no, we're going to go back. And the next year they said, you know what, we're not going back. And they never have. And everybody said, yeah, because there was something up there, wasn't there? Mouth shut. They won't say a word.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want to look at. This other stuff, I agree. It looks interesting a little bit. It's not the hardcore stuff. It's not the real nitty-gritty. There's water there. Something's seriously going on. Is NASA going to tell us? They won't. They won't. They have their own agenda.
Well, what do you think of the people that have come out and said there are active bases on Mars and active bases on the moon, current? I mean, if there are ancient ones up there, I could potentially buy that. But what about the whole concept of active bases, and we send people to the moon and Mars all the time?
Yeah, I don't know, because Rita, where I stick with is kind of the scientific lines of research, and when people start speculating and they go off on tangents, I honestly don't know. I have no facts to base it on. Now if we want to just purely speculate and infer, from, I would say the moon, something happened, just the way that NASA conducted that, and the fact the Russians could never get there. Every one of their missions just was destroyed, and NASA never went back. And it's easy to get to the moon. That tells me something. That kind of I get an inferential kind of evidence that something happened, and it puts it together with the other evidence. I've read the transcripts of the astronauts on the moon, and they were talking about some very strange things. They were talking about structures, and they were all excited, and then they started changing the code in the mission, so you couldn't understand. The first mission you could understand. After that, you couldn't. They coded everything, and then you have these weird blips where the audio falls out, is gone, and you have a live TV transmission. Then you have an astronaut pointing a camera at the sun, and it's like, wait a minute, there's too many strange things going on here. But in terms of Mars, I don't know. I don't, and I don't know. I am not claiming to know where these beings come from, because that brings up another issue, and I don't know, where do you want to go right now? Because we can go in the direction, to me, DNA and genetic manipulation is the easy one. Space travel is the hard one.
Sure, let's go to space travel. I'm open. We have so much stuff that we could talk about.
Exactly.
When I was putting this together, I was like, 2 hours is like so not enough time.
No, it's not. It's because there's so much, really. And I had to really, really think it through these intervening years as I've been watching NASA and keeping track of, what not just NASA, but India has their space mission, Japanese have theirs, Europe has theirs. So it keeps NASA more honest, because they will publish what they find. That's when I noticed that NASA came out with the water discovery, and they said, yeah, we found water. But because India had already announced it. But NASA already knew it was there, like I said earlier. They knew it was there. And what's water doing on the moon? Nobody knows. They don't know that much about the moon. And to me, the moon could be artificial. There's a lot of things about it that argue for it being artificial. It's very important for life that we have those tides, that everything that the moon does keeps life going on Earth. This interaction between the two. I would not be surprised, and it is such a the orbit is so perfect that you got there it is, just far enough away that it blocks the sun just perfectly for an eclipse. And mathematically, the thing looks very engineered to me. But can I actually see, factually, a lot of things that NASA did, a lot of people were saying, that moon just might be artificial with this tiny little surface layer, and then when they hit the spacecraft, it reverberated the whole moon for hours like it was metal. And then we don't, NASA just doesn't want to go back so that we could nail that one down. But the rest of the space travel thing that's where I have to admit that how did these extraterrestrials get here? Those distances, are vast, incomprehensibly vast. I have no answer to that. We would have to upgrade our technology by many magnitudes to even think about it.
But I think, we're talking about people staying inside the box. I think that the technology that they're looking to power the rockets, the solid rocket boosters, et cetera, is based on a technology that's 40 years old, 50, 60 years old. I mean, it's ancient. And
No,
no
you're
one's
right.
really stepped outside the box and tried to look at it in a different way.
Yeah, we don't know what, Einstein pointed it out, and people haven't, the quantum physicists took it. They're still kind of stuck in two paradigms, and they certainly unraveled, that we don't understand that much about space, time, matter, and energy. I mean, it's all one continuum. So what did somebody else, what you're suggesting is this other race, if we were even a million years past where we are, who knows? We could have figured all that out. We could know that, I don't know, this is no big deal to travel in this space because the way we think of it, it is, but we're looking at it in one way, through one lens. I mean, we looked at it Newton's way for centuries, and most people still do. They don't get what Einstein was saying. But our technology, sure, it has way behind in all that. Way behind.
Well, and once they pretty much dismantled NASA, it just made it where that whole investigation has gone nowhere. I mean, unless, the privatization of space.
No, they can't do it. They'll never have enough money to do it. It took a national effort. It takes the space, the moon mission was hugely expensive. That's why they don't want to do the manned missions, because they don't think they could ever get the money to do them. They're so different. They're so expensive. It just takes a huge amount of resources, and not just that, we can't go anywhere. I mean, if you go out as far as Neptune, even before Neptune, you're already out of the loop with Earth. I mean, you're already, it already takes light 8 minutes to travel. What are you going to do? You send a signal out, SOS, doesn't get there for 8 minutes, a response doesn't come back, so you're 16 minutes total, you're already dead. No, we're not going there.
Well, if something bad happens out by Neptune or Mars or the moon, you're dead anyway.
That's right. And that's why they're not going. It's Star Trek fantasy. All of this stuff Star Trek drove it in the 60s along with UFOs. Those were the two driving forces. It wasn't just science. It was tell us if these UFOs are real, and let's go on this. Yes, let's go on the grand voyage. Captain Kirk, let's go. Folks, that's a Hollywood set. That's not space. That's all in your imagination. When you get to the hardcore facts, we're not going anywhere. NASA already found out. They've already done so many experiments with the body in zero gravity. It does terribly. People get sick. They throw up. Their muscles atrophy. Their brains go wacky. It's not going to work. See, that's why I'm saying, and astronomers can't have it both ways. I mean, they'll say, and the physicists, that, well, now the space people never came here because it's too far. Well, then don't tell me we're going there. You're kind of defeating yourself with that argument, because we're not. It's too deadly, like you just said. It's lethal out there. You can't make one mistake.
But if you are a civilization that has ongoing and regular space travel, and you decide to do a long distance mission, I mean, I'm just kind of being hypothetical here, then it would be possible to do that and not so scary. I mean, we're not afraid to get in our cars and necessarily drive across the country, even though it might take us a week or more to do it, because we have faith that our cars, depending on what kind of car you have, obviously will allow us to transport ourselves across the country.
Right. Well, an advanced civilization, we don't know which direction they would have gone, but they would have mastered space. They would have mastered it. They would have mastered their galaxy. Kaku had an interesting theory. He said, we can't tell. We could be living in somebody else's galaxy. There could be a more advanced civilization that made this whole thing that we live in. And you have to consider that very seriously, because our literature kind of says that. We're living, this is somebody else's.
What do you mean?
Let us have this and evolve here. Then the question becomes, why did the UFOs suddenly appear in the late 1940s? Right after the atomic bombs went off in New Mexico, in New Mexico. And why did Roswell happen to be the 409th Atomic Bomb Squadron that found the UFO? Was somebody giving somebody a message? Yeah, of course. They were right there with it. You know, they were around New Mexico, and wow, boy, they're doing, you know, they're messing around with nuclear power, and now they've done the bomb, and they were flying around southern New Mexico, and I've been there. I've been to Roswell in that area, and there it was. They crashed a vehicle, and it's so stupid that people, when it came out, this is 1947, you got to realize that was right on the heels of the end of World War II. It ended in 46. People loved and respected the military. There was none all of this questioning about the government. America was very united then. So when the government said so, when they first said, we found a UFO, we found a flying saucer out there in the mountains, and our intelligence officer went out there and examined it, and yeah, it was an alien craft. Then the next day, they reversed the whole thing. The public said, oh, okay, because the American public then believed anything that the military and government said. And nobody ever followed up an investigation. There were no UFO organizations or anything. There weren't people like us. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how that played out, you know. And then when that intelligence, now you got to look at, was this a sharp cookie? Look, he was the head intelligence officer for the Atomic Bomb Squadron. Would he mistake a balloon and a flying saucer? No, hardly. And guess what? The two key people, I was in the military, I know how it works. The two key people in that drama both got promotions. Now, if they were so stupid as to mistake a balloon, do you think the military? No, they got promoted because, hey, you were good soldiers. You did what we said. You took the heat. You changed your story. You said, we made a mistake. We feel stupid. That was just a balloon. Then, 30 years later...
Well, it sounds just like mythology, that they can't describe what was right in front of their eyes.
Oh, and they were, these were trained military personnel who were very serious. And here, he's describing how this material that he finds, how it acts, and it's nothing like anything on Earth. It has memory, and, he's bending it around, and it goes back into its shape, and all this. This is real. Do I totally accept the whole story about the bodies and everything? No, but I do know they found that vehicle. That's real. The rest of it, be careful.
Well, so do you think that they used that vehicle and reverse engineered it, and which helped bring about the
Absolutely.
Major advances that we've had in technology since then?
Absolutely. No doubt about it. The French, the top scientists in France, military people in government, they did their own independent UFO study, and what they came out with in it was, we know that the United States knows something, and the United States is not going to tell anybody. Whatever they know, it's the closest guarded secret there is. It's not coming out, and it won't. They're not coming out unless they're told to. But you're exactly right, and Corso was being honest. He knew what happened. Yes, they reverse engineered it. And what happened with America? Everything, all of a sudden, everything, boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden in the 50s, we got computers and transistors, and boom, from there, it just all goes crazy. And when you start to get the pieces together, and it's a very big puzzle, and don't mistake me that I have it all put together. I don't, because it's a huge puzzle. But I do see some of these things are so obvious, and I've read the documents. I've read the earliest reports, Blue Book reports, and the ones before that, Project Grudge, Project Sign, and all the early ones said, these things are real. We don't know what they are, but they're real. Then all of a sudden, the top brass said, oh, no, they're not. They changed on a dime, and ever since then, they've held to that official position.
And I don't understand that. I can understand, based on our earlier conversation, about them not wanting to do the ancient astronaut kind of idea, because then you have to change the timeline if for whatever reason they're hiding our past, whatever. Um, but to not come out and say that there's an extraterrestrial presence now. I mean, the only thing that I can think of is, there are people that talk about there was an agreement between the extraterrestrials and Eisenhower, and that's
Right.
part of it.
Right.
Or, I could even potentially understand that they didn't want to make the announcement in after the Roswell incident, and now they're like kind of stuck with their big fat lies.
Right.
And I can kind of
Well, then
understand that.
the next big one, and the one they really had trouble with, more so than Roswell, was 1952 in Washington. Because when UFOs buzzed the Capitol 2 weekends in a row, and everybody saw them, and even the congressmen, and everybody knew it, that's why Americans were so, hey, what's going on? They still had to stick to the party line. They still did. And they would repudiate their own officers. That's not easy to do, because that starts to break down morale. When you take good men who are reporting the facts, the truth, and you say, no, he got it totally wrong. Yeah, but he's corroborated by radar people. Oh, no, they got it totally wrong, too. Yeah, but there was all kinds of people on the ground and airline pilots who saw it, too. No, they all got it wrong. Okay. That's literally what they did. This is a sad chapter, and to me, people don't understand that this is part of why America is what it is today. Because you have this, now we don't even know what the group is, but various people have told us about the group. There is a group, a secret government who does everything off the books. They have their own military. They have everything their own. Daniel Inouye said it. Congressional Medal of Honor winner said it. He's not going to lie. He was in the Senate. There's a secret government. He said it once. He would never talk about it again. It's dangerous. What I'm saying, these things I'm saying are dangerous. I won't deny it. They're dangerous. But when enough people start saying it, it lessens the danger for individuals. When enough people realize we're being lied to now, we were being lied to then, if we accept the lies will get bigger. And they are. Right?
Yeah, I mean, because they have to just keep perpetuating it and perpetuating it and perpetuating it. And my feeling is there's what's going on with the UFOs, but then there's everything else.
That's right.
The whole big pharma thing and Monsanto, and I mean,
right.
The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
Because you have a group of people, a very small elite group now, who has so much money hidden away that you can't do. You know what happened on September 10th, right? 2001, day before September 11th.
No, but go ahead. No, I'm going to say no.
Okay. What's his face? Who was Secretary of State then? No, he was the head of defense. Rumsfeld. He came out in a press conference the day before and announced the Pentagon is missing $1.6 trillion.
How could you be missing that much money?
And you can go and look it up on the internet. You can look that up. But what happens the next day that totally took over the news so that was never investigated? You know what happened. Changed the world. So this is how they operate. This is no joke. And when you start seeing the patterns, that's why so many people now are talking about false flags, and we're talking about UFOs and the reality. Well, and then people are also saying we might get a UFO false flag reality. We might. What I saw, and I didn't feel, I wasn't frightened. I watched this, and the person that was with me, though, she was petrified, and she would never talk about it again because it totally jarred her world, her reality. She couldn't comprehend it, and so that was it. Didn't happen, gone. But it didn't frighten me, and I don't think we should be frightened by these beings. That's not to say there aren't malevolent beings, though. But the main ones that were involved with our generation and our development, how could we be? They gave us life. They gave us this opportunity. They're not, and this idea, we're not exactly, they're not exact. Those aren't aliens. They're not aliens. I think there are aliens out there, but it's not them. Who these little grays are, they popped on that. Be careful of that whole thing. Just be very careful of it, because I started this research in 1969, and I followed the progression, and I watched what happened after Hollywood. Their movies came out. That's when the Greys came out and have been around ever since.
Well, my observation is that somebody somewhere says something, and excuse the way I say this, they just pull it out of their ass. And the next thing you know is everybody else has latched onto it and is running around with it saying, it's truth, it's truth, it's truth.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, hang on. Neutron has been trying to ask questions all night. And,
okay.
Let me hit his question.
Yeah, you run the show.
All right. And this is from Neutron. Was the group now controlling the knowledge of the phenomena, the one created in 1952 following a UFO flap in Washington, where the president panicked and gave the responsibility /file to the, I think he means skunk work, Lockheed Martin? Well, to the Bilderberg group.
What is the question now? That event is documented. It happened, right? The 1952 flap over Washington, there's photos, there's documented military reports. It's real. What did the power structure do? They let the military play the same hand that they played in Roswell. We're going to keep the party line. That is our story from now on, and it still is. But that was it. But as far as the skunk works and all that, I honestly don't know that. I can't answer that part of it, but I can answer those two things.
Okay. All right, where were we? I totally agree with you about the misdirection. Sometimes they'll put stuff on TV, like recently, and I only half pay attention to a lot of this, but I think there was like a senator from Florida, and he said that there was 28 pages from some document that was missing or needed to be published, and blah 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 blah, and and it was hitting the news big time. And the first thing that goes through my head is, okay, so what's really going on that they're making this news story be important?
Well, what I noticed, like over the spectrum, all the way back into the 50s, was that the media went through different phases, and the media is controlled by the government. We know that. People know it now. They didn't want to know it before, but the media, the government tells them, and they print what they're told. So it started out in the late 40s and the early 50s that, okay, well, just be pretty objective to it. But then they turned it very quickly to, no, it's only crazy people that see this. They ridicule the phenomena. They would ridicule anybody. I don't care who it was. But if you go to the scientists, and I've looked at the archives of lots of top scientists, and they say, oh, yeah, there's extraterrestrials out there, no doubt. So why are we being played in the middle? Why are we getting the disinformation down here? That's what we have to figure out. And is anybody going to pressure the U.S. government to release what they know? No. No, you're not. The U.S. government now is totally renegade. They are absolutely doing what they want. Most of it's against the Constitution. They know it. They don't care. You see that, right?
Oh, I totally see it. And I don't know that I think people are to the point that they see it and they don't know what they can do. Because basically the only answer is anarchy, but, they've been collecting up the guns and collecting up the ammunition and collecting up the gold and making it so that we are helpless.
But that's the price for not paying attention to the signs and acting earlier. You know what I'm saying? People had an opportunity, and they didn't take it. So when they started doing, when JFK was the first thing, that was the first big sign. Then there've been a few others, Vietnam, but then they kind of backed off in Vietnam, but they did conduct it for 10 years, even though people were protesting, just like with wars now. They don't care what the American people want. They could care less. The people running the show do exactly what they want. They're paying no attention at all to anyone else. Because they've consolidated, like you just said, they've consolidated their power and wealth to the degree they know they can't be touched. Who's going to do it? And also, people look at Putin and Russia. Don't be misled. Putin and Russia are not what you think. Everybody's in this thing. They're just all playing it to their own people. The U.S., Americans get their version of it, and the Chinese get theirs. But this thing is so massive in scope, that you just got to keep expanding, your consciousness and your knowledge and go, okay, I see that. Now what's the next thing? I mean, now I think I can see pretty much what's coming, not the specific date. I can see the financial collapse. I can see why they're setting up this police state, because when the financial collapse up, there will be anarchy then, and they intend to round everybody up. That's what it's just simple. It's that simple, like you said. Let's go to anarchy. It's true because there's no other choice.
Okay, so we have a question from Carol.
Anybody?
Hang on a second. Where'd she go? Aside from anarchy, is there a fix here?
And I'm not promoting anarchy because that's what will get you put in a camp or whatever. Yes, it really is that each one of us, it's take individual responsibility for your state of mind. Do not let all these things that are intended to throw you off balance, that are intended to keep you anxious and worried about the future, don't let them grab a hold of. They're trying to grab a hold of your attention. They're trying to direct you. Don't let them do it. That's what this spiritual strength is all about. It is stay in there, stay with the truth. Whatever you have to do to keep that calm, do it, and then try to protect yourself however you need to, whatever you see is the best plan. Right now, I don't see that any kind of organization can do it. People are looking to Bernie Sanders. I don't think so. But...
Well, they say that, these politicians run on their platform, and as soon as they enter the White House, everything changes, and all the stuff they say kind of goes away. I mean, you listen to Obama's speeches, and he ran on one platform, and that is totally not what we got.
Exactly.
And what they realize is that once they enter the White House, it's kind of like they're shown the secret book and told this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. And they, on some level, become powerless, or run by somebody else.
You see, that's where I think Americans need to get more internationalized, and not in the sense of globalist, but in the sense of the rest of the world is watching America and wondering, what the heck is going on over there? What is these people about now? What is this country about? It's not what it used to be. And the power structure has to respond when the whole world goes. And if Americans just didn't show up to vote, the UN would go, you know what? You had a 30% voter turnout. Something's wrong. That's like Paraguay. And if you have Jeb Bush up there, who's going to show up to vote for him? That's almost a joke. That's almost the power elite sticking a thumb in your eye. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't here to go off on a political thing, really. But it's part of, you have to address it. It's our reality now. We can talk about all the Great Pyramid and all these other things. The truth is, this is our reality right now.
Well, do you think back during Egypt or during some of these other cultures, like in Mesoamerica or Peru, where they lived in these autocratic theocracies, if they weren't saying kind of the same things we are today?
Sure. I don't think things change that much. Human nature doesn't change at all. We can go back and look at a Roman farce or Shakespeare and go, oh yeah, That's people. They're just the same. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same drama, change the players around in the clothes and give them some new gadgets. But, no, it's the same human nature. And I agree. It was, and now to me, and what I've read out of Princeton and different, even the academics are saying, look, there's no democracy anymore, folks. We can't find it. We looked. The government does not represent you at all. You got an oligarchy, period. That's what it is. And can Americans swallow that, or do they need the myth? Can Americans choke it down? Because we know that the Egyptians were probably told the biggest crock of stuff you could imagine. They had to do this, and their gods were watching them, and this and that, and you did this, you're going to hell forever. We've heard it all. They've always had ways of controlling us, and they don't vary that much. It's just very hard to, and it may not take masses. And I think maybe that's where we get. I think it more take a few individuals who really do make the change. Make the change in consciousness, who transform and aren't afraid at all. They just put it out there. This is what it is.
But even if there's one thing about putting it out there, and then there's another thing about getting any kind of change to actually.
That's all you can do, though.
Oh, I know.
All you can do, you and I can do, is you give it your best shot, and you put yourself out there, and you speak the truth, and that's all you can do. What other people do with it, that's not yours. In the end, really, each one of us has our own experience and our perceptions of life, and that's all we have. We don't have anything else. You're going to go out of this world. That's what you're going to go out with. Your memories, your perceptions, that's it. You don't take anything with you. But when you look at it, when you start living moment to moment, day to day, that's really all you have. So it becomes more paramount that you don't let them, and they're trying to, and they do it with most people, take that away from you. And they do. They tell you, this is what you shall think, this is what you shall feel, this is what you shall do. These are the taxes you pay, these are the wars you go to. And it's endless. It is. It's endless.
Well, and it just seems like it becomes more and more. One law that they enact periodically in some states, which I think is so bizarre, is the concept that you can't collect the rainwater that lands on your house. You can't use it to irrigate your property or whatever. And, there's a thing that's been floating around on Facebook that, some guy got arrested in Oregon. And I'm like, how freaking absurd. It fell on my property. Now, if it fell on the street and I collected it, I could see you being upset. But it fell on my property. So shut up.
But the point of it is, and I see how people are perceiving it. I see that they're doing all these absurd laws. Why? No, their reason is control. I've controlled you here and here. Now I'm going to push it the next step. Do you have a line anywhere? That's what it gets down to. They're trying to see. I was flabbergasted in 2008. When the most massive financial scam ever was pulled off, and the American people were like a bunch of zombies. Well, I just got robbed, but okay. It was bankers did it. I guess I can't do anything. Nobody goes to jail. Okay.
Oh, the one where we had to do the whole bailout?
But think about it. Well, yeah, it's all bullshit. It's all put on. They stole your money, and then they made you pay on top of it. It's absurd.
My favorite part, and then they got bonuses.
But here's the deal then. What the power structure is saying is, do you have a line? If you keep backstepping every time and you never have a line anywhere, guess what? We're going to control how much toilet paper you use.
No, not the toilet paper. Not the toilet paper.
We have to have a little levity here. Because you can push it, and then people start getting crazy, They just do. They just start getting very angry. I see a lot of people in the black community now that are just so angry about everything and blaming whites for everything. I have never seen racism so bad in the country as it is now. After the civil rights movement, after affirmative action, after all of this, and they're angrier now than ever. You know why? They're being controlled.
Mm-hmm.
They're just being controlled. And I tell them, and I have grandkids that are mixed, and I tell blacks that, yeah, you're going to look at me and think I'm a cracker or whatever. I got 3 grandkids that are mixed. I got skin in this game. You know, I'm a human being. I'm here. And I hear the things you're saying, and you are wrong. You don't know the history. You've been lied to. And you're flipping racism around 180 degrees, and you're becoming it. That's exactly what they want. That's how they divide and conquer. It's the oldest strategy in the book, and they're perfect at it. They master that.
Well, and it just seems like it's getting worse and worse. You know, now we have the whole, like, gay marriage thing, which people are in uproar about and blah. And it's just like, really, you know, don't even get me started down that road. But Will, our time is just about up.
All right.
And so your book, Genesis Race, I mean, I mentioned it before. It's still available, correct?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. I think it's now in a digital format, but it's still on Amazon. And I do have the next book will be published here coming up. I'm not exactly sure when, but it's already, in the hopper and will come out. I don't write as many articles. I used to write a lot for different magazines, but I don't so much anymore. But I enjoyed it, and this is the first interview I've done for many years. I don't do them.
That's because you like me.
Well, now that I've talked to you, you know what? I do like you. I like your demeanor.
I thought you liked me before. Man.
I didn't know you before. I was interested in the work you were doing, but now I know you, so I can legitimately say I like you, and I can hear in your voice you seem like a pretty calm, relaxed, level-headed lady, and we need a lot of that. The more level-headed. Well, you asked, what can we do? That's actually what people can do, because a lot of people are going crazy right now. They're getting spun out, and so there needs to be people, who can stay in the center.
All right. Well, I know the music's going to come up here in a second. I am going to let you go. This was wonderful. I can't wait for your new book to come out. Do you know what the title is going to be? Have they just decided that yet?
It's actually, it'll be Genesis Race 2, and it's called Cosmic Ancestry.
The sequel.
That's right. Well, it is.
Well, I can't wait.
Well, I enjoyed the conversation a lot, and I look forward to the next time.
Perfect. All right. Well, I am going to let you go.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. That's Will Hart. His book is The Genesis Race, Our Extraterrestrial DNA and the True Origins of the Species. Next time, we have our good friend Brian Forrester coming on talking about elongated skulls, cranial manipulation, or genetic anomaly. Until next time, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio.